web assigned homework, but it will work the same way. And I think I have to make one announcement. Last class, I think I said that if you wanted to come in during a makeup class, if you wanted to come to the earlier one, it was okay. Or because I have two business math classes today, same material, so I said you could come to either one. But that doesn't really work in terms of taking the quiz. So for the future, you have to come to the correct class. So if you're if you're a Tuesday class, you have to come to the Tuesday makeup, even though it might be the same day. And if you're a Monday class, then you have to come to the Monday makeup, okay? Because the quizzes don't work that well this way. Yeah. Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay, so we have these two types of interest that we want to talk about. So let's talk about simple interest. Okay, but actually you've already done it. We've already finished, actually. I already asked you, how much will you have at the end of the 10 years? So what was the answer? What was the answer? How much will you have at the end of the 10 years? We said you'll have 10,000 plus 1,200. I'm sorry, 10,000 plus 12,000. 22,000, right? So we actually did the whole topic already. Okay, we just need to throw in the right words so that you know you're familiar with the language, but the calculation is done. We already did it. Okay? But anyway, let's learn the words and let's look at the different variations of this, but it's all the same, basically. We've done it. Okay, so here's another example. So here, we're going to deposit how much? Not $10,000, but how much? $1,000, okay? And how do you spell it? Is it P-L-E or P-A-L? P-A-L, okay. So it's a principal. Okay, and another word for the same thing, another word you can use is what? Besides principal, you can use what other word? Present value. Okay, so it's the same word, same meaning, different word. Okay, so present value. So the present value was what in this example? In the one on the board. On the example I did on the board, the present value was what? That's the amount that you put in the bank, so that is how much? 10,000. So that was the present value, that's the principal. Okay? The bank in this in this PowerPoint, it gives you not 12%, but 5%. Okay? In the form of a check. How much interest will you earn each year? So what's the answer for this one? That's 5% of 1,000, right? What's 10% of 1,000? 10% of 1,000 is 100, so 5% of 1,000 is 50. So you're going to earn $50 each year, and that's what they did here, $50. Right? Okay. How did you calculate the $50? Or how did I calculate the $1,200 in my first example? How did you calculate the $50? What did you do? It was very simple, but what did you do? You just took the $1,000 times 5%, right? So the interest is what? In words, what's the interest? What's the $1,000 called? The principal or the present value. And then this is called the interest rate. Okay, 5% is called the interest rate. 12% in my first example was called the interest rate. So to get the interest in 1 year, what's the calculation? You take the present value times the interest rate, right? Okay, so that's not very hard. So that's what they have at the very bottom of the screen, right? What does the bottom of the screen say? the interest, INT, the interest, is equal to what? The present value times the rate, right? It's not too complicated, right? Does everyone agree? Okay, so that's the formula. Let's keep that in mind. So the interest is, again, what is it? PV times R, right? Now how about if you leave it in the bank for 2 years? How much will you have? So if you had $50 the first year, how much interest will you have in total in 2 years? How much interest will you have? $100. And how about in 3 years? 150. And how about in 10 years? 500. So what calculation are you doing? You're taking PV times R, that's the interest in 1 year, times the number of years, right? Which we'll denote by T. So, the interest is what? PV times R times T, right? It's pretty straightforward, right? So again, if you do it for 10 years, and you put and PV, the present value, is 1,000, and the interest rate is 5%, then what's the calculation? 1,000 times the 5% times the 10 years, right? Okay? So everybody understand that? The only thing is that if you write it, what did they say? $1,000, right? $1,000 times the what? 5% times 10 years, right? Right? The only problem is that it's not very convenient to have to deal with a formula that contains a percentage sign in it. Okay, I mean, you can do it, but it's messy. So what's better than leaving that percentage sign in there? What's better than that? You can convert a percentage to what? To a decimal number, right? So what's the decimal expression for 5%? 0.05, right? Everybody should know that, right? So that's the better calculation to do instead of leaving the percentage sign in there, which you don't want to do. Okay, so just remember that you have to convert percentage to a decimal. Okay, so if we do this calculation, we're going to get, let's do this part first. What do we get when we do that? We get 0.5, right? And then if we multiply that times 1,000, we get 500. Okay? And this is called simple interest. Okay? Everyone okay with this? Okay, here's another example. What's the difference? What's the principal here? 5,000. Because it says a $5,000 investment. That means you're putting that into the bank, for example. What's the interest rate? 8%, and how do we convert that to a decimal? 0.08. And they're asking what will it be in 4 years. Okay, so we multiply by 4. So you get 1,600. Okay, any questions? Now this is the interest that's different than the interest rate. What's the interest in this example on the screen? 1,600. What's the interest rate? 8%, right? Those are not the same thing, right? Right? The interest rate is what? 8%. The interest is what? 1,600, right? We have to distinguish between the interest rate and the interest, right? We're using kind of similar words there, but they're definitely not the same thing, right? The interest rate is 8%. The interest is $1,600. So don't get those words confused. Okay? If we want the interest rate, we're talking about a percent or like a decimal. If we want the interest, it's like money. Right? Is that clear? Okay, any questions? So going back to the first example, what did we say? How much money would we have at the end of the 10 years? The first example on the board. We said we put 10,000 in and 12%. So how much money did we have at the end of the 10 years? We already said we had $22,000, right? So we need a name for that quantity. Okay? So what should we call it? What should we call it? Any suggestions? It's on the screen here. The 22,000 is how much it's worth in 10 years. What should we call that? The future value. Okay? So the present value was what in the green example on the board? The present value was what? 10,000. That's how much you put in. That's the principal or the present value, right? And the future value is what? 22,000. Okay, so the future value is given here, right? How did you get the future value? The interest was what? 12,000. And the present value was what? 10,000, right? So the future value is what? The present value plus the interest. Right? Does everyone understand? It's very simple, right? The future value is how much you put in the bank plus the interest you get. That's called the future value. Any questions about that? So, what's the formula for the, So before we go on, do you remember what we talked about 3 minutes ago? Can you write down the formula for the interest? Not the interest rate, but the interest. Can you write down the formula? Just write it down on a piece of paper or on your hand, or type it on your computer, or send yourself a message on your phone. Just write down, what is the formula, can you remember from 3 minutes ago, for the interest, INT? What's the formula for the interest? Can you remember that far back, 3 minutes ago? Did everybody write it down? Okay, what is it? PV, what's PV stand for? Present value, times what? R, which is what? The interest rate, times what? T, okay? So that's the interest, right? So now we have the future value is what? The present value plus the interest. So we have it here, the future value is the present value, but we just said we could rewrite the interest as this, right? Right, you just did it. You just wrote interest was PV RT, right? Okay, now we can do very simple algebra to this and get what? The future value can also be written as what? Very simple algebra means what? We can factor the PV out of both terms here. So we get what? PV times 1 plus RT, right? So that's just an alternate expression for the future value, right? Okay? So you'll see that often, and you shouldn't be bothered by it, right? Because it's just the simplest. It's just the present value plus the interest. That's all. Okay? Does everyone agree? Okay. So the future value. Now what I'd like you to do on a piece of paper is solve the. So let me erase this part in here. Let me erase this part in here. So I just have FV equals PV times 1 plus RT, right? Okay, now solve that for PV. Solve that equation for PV. It's currently FV. It's currently solved for FV, but solve it for PV, please, on a piece of paper. Okay? What is PV? We know that FV is PV times 1 plus RT, so PV is what? What is PV? FV over 1 plus RT, right? Right? Just bring this 1 plus RT over underneath here. Right? Does everyone agree with that? Okay, so that is what? That says what? The present value is the future value divided by something. Right? Does everyone agree? Let me see if I can find that here. Here. Is that what you had? Did everybody get the same thing? Of course you did, right? So that says the present value can be written as the future value divided by 1 plus RT, right? Which is bigger, the present value or the future value in general? What do you expect to be bigger when you put money into the bank? Do you expect to get less money at the end or more? More, right? Right? So which is bigger, the present value or the future value? Right, so the present value is smaller than the future value, right? And this expression says that, right? It says that it's the future value divided by something bigger than 1. That means it's reduced, right? So the future value reduced by this factor is the present value. Okay? Everyone agree with that? So it makes sense, of course. But this formula would allow you to do what? To calculate the present value if you were given what? This would allow you to calculate the present value if you were given what quantities? What? Future value and? Interest rate and? The time, right? So for example, suppose you said, how much money do I need now in order to have $1 million in 20 years? Right? So you could use this formula, right? Why? Because you say, how much money would I need now? That's called the what? The amount of money I need now is called the present value, right? If I want to have how much? $1 million, that's the future value, so that's FV, in 20 years, so T is equal to 20, and then we have to decide on an interest rate. Let's say we said 5%, which is not particularly reasonable. I don't think you'd get 5%, but let's just say 5%. So you could just put in, what number do you put in for R? If it's 5%, what number do you put in? 0.05, yeah, sorry. Okay, 0.05, right. Okay, so you could figure it out, right? You could say, oh, I need blah, 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 right? Certain amount of money. In fact, why don't you do it? Can you do it with a calculator on your computer? Or on your phone? Or in Excel? How many people know how to do this in Excel? Okay, let's do it. Let me show you how to do it in Excel. But I don't want to. Okay. So in Excel, I'll open up Excel here. In Excel, let's find Excel. Where is it? Microsoft Office. So.